Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I must say that the One Globe conference is being held on a very, very important day in our parliamentary calendar because today is the day when the government is supposed to present a vote on account at 11 in the morning. But as most of you who are well acquainted with India would know that like all traditions and canons of propriety which have been sacrificed over the past 55 months, so I don't think we are going to have a vote on account, but the government would possibly present a full-fledged budget. And if that be the case, this would be a completely new precedent because a government which has been elected for 5 years would actually be presenting 6 budgets. And that's something which has never ever happened, at least since we started having regular general elections in 1952. The second reason why this One Globe conference is also, if I may say, very appropriately timed, is because our election calendar has already kicked in. Not that we are ever off the election treadmill, because things have got structured in such a manner that some part of India or the other is actually voting every 2 or 3 months. But then, yes, a general election at the end of 5 years does hold a great amount of significance for the 850 million odd people who participate in this largest democratic franchise. As we speak, we should be about 45 days from the Model Code of Conduct to kick in. And by the middle of April, the first round of general elections would have kicked off. So it's really a very appropriate time to sort of reflect back on the last 55, 56 months. And as Major Dalbir Singh was telling me, since this conference is dedicated to building knowledge societies, so therefore it may be a good time to reflect upon the fact that how much have we achieved in the past 55, 56 months over the term of this government in really being able to enhance our capacity or our trajectory towards building an inclusive society and, more importantly, a knowledge society. And there I think we have a mixed bag because somewhere along the way we've missed the bus. 2014 was really an inflection point where if we would have put the appropriate policy framework into place, we would have been able to move quite rapidly into the sunrise areas which are really defining the international economic paradigm. So be it artificial intelligence, be it nanotechnology, be it the other sunrise areas which are really at the cutting edge of the future of what the knowledge economy is going to be. Of course, we have been able to do some incubation in this regard, but the enabling policy framework, which should really have been put in place in order to give this the kind of incentive, the kind of boost, the kind of torque which government policies can give to these sectors, that unfortunately has been completely and absolutely missing. I think the mistake which the current government made was that they still chose to concentrate on the brick and mortar economy. The Make in India and the various other initiatives which they had unveiled and which unfortunately have not fructified very much, they never really concentrated or focused upon the sunrise areas, preferring to focus on traditional manufacturing, which unfortunately is a ship which sailed for India at least 3 decades ago. And in that sense of the word, when you have a new government in the May of 2019, that's one trajectory which needs to be looked at very seriously. And we obviously would require all the knowledge, all the capacity, all the wisdom which is available not only in this conference hall but around the world to be able to assist in putting that policy format or that policy architecture in place. The other area which has been a cause of increasing concern is that there is a fundamental equation which the current dispensation chose to overlook, perhaps deliberately driven by an ideological agenda. And that is that social discord and economic development cannot go hand in hand. And if you have social discord, economic development is going to be a logical casualty of that process. And as Major Dalbir Singh ji was telling me that my colleague Sashi Tharoor, who was here in the morning, perhaps addressed that issue at some length. But the fact remains that over the last 56 odd months, we are a country which has been on an edge. And the reason why we've been on an edge is primarily the causes go back all the way to 1947 and the partition of India. So out of a blood-stained partition in which millions were uprooted, many more were killed, maimed, there emerged two nations, an Islamic Pakistan and a pluralistic, inclusive India. However, even at the birth of the modern Indian state, there was a very, very strong strain of thought which believed that if we had a partition on religious lines, it should have gone to a logical conclusion. That is, if you have a Muslim Pakistan or an Islamic Pakistan, you should have had a Hindu India. Fortunately for us as a country, the founding fathers of the Indian state were extremely wise people. And despite all the anger and the anguish and the rage at that point in time, which even consumed the life of Mahatma Gandhi, and we marked his 71st death anniversary on the 30th of January, they were successful in creating a pluralistic and inclusive state where, irrespective of denomination, everybody enjoyed equal rights. And for the next 7 decades, we were able to consolidate that ideal. And that also helped in putting many major economic initiatives in place, whether it was under the command economy model or later on when India decided to liberalize, globalize, and join the global economy. However, that strain never died. And in 2014, when the current NDA BJP government came into office, they thought that and it was a majority government on the narrowest electoral base since 1952, 31% of the people voted for the BJP, which means that 69% people actually voted against them, or not, at least not for them. They thought that they have got the license to underwrite the fundamental compact which underpins the Indian Republic, which is the idea of India. And that's why the vigilantism, whether in the name of the cow or the lynchings that we unfortunately saw, the various other regressive, reactionary tendencies which were deliberately unleashed by the current government and their ideological progenitors, it was a very calculated attempt to try and convert India into a de facto majoritarian state. Fortunately, for the perseverance of the Indian people and for their genius to be able to see through very insidious tendencies, that project has not succeeded in the past 4.5 years or 4 years and 7 months. But it is not as if that project is over. And it is in that context that the 2019 elections become extremely important, because this is not an election whereby you are really voting for a change of government because a government has not performed or a government has not lived up to the expectations and aspirations or the promises which they had made in 2013 and 2014 when they were aspiring to come to office. The battle is far, far more fundamental. And the battle is whether the First Republic, which came into existence on the 26th of January 1950, would survive, or it would actually be replaced by a Second Republic. Those are the contours of the challenge which India faces in the 2019 elections. So, in a sense, we've actually gone back to 1947, and we are refighting the battle for the identity of India. That what is the kind of India that we really should be? And for a large number of us who've actually grown up to believe that a liberal, inclusive India is something that we take for granted, that it is always going to be there, the last 5 years have been a very, very rude wake-up call. And that's why, if you even read the international press over the last, especially the last 2 years, whether in England or the United States of America or in France or at other places, you would find that a large amount of the coverage is not really devoted to India as the emerging economic destination, but what really has been playing itself out. And the tragedy is that while the international press or the international media has been extremely sensitive to this attempt to subvert the idea of India and try and put something else in its place, we've had almost a complete silence in this country. And there emerges the second challenge. Well, we've never been very high on the freedom of speech and expression index, notwithstanding the fact that we have a very diverse and a free media, 100,000 odd newspapers, 850 odd television channels, FM radio, community radio, and of course, a very vibrant social media. But the challenge which has emerged in the past 55 months is not about the freedom of speech and expression. It is actually freedom after expression. And that's why you've seen this large scale intimidation of, voices which have been in dissent or which have been dissenting from what the overarching ruling narrative is. And a very, very peculiar formulation, which is extremely dangerous for democracy, has been put in place by the ruling dispensation. That if you criticize the ruling party, you are anti-national. If you criticize the government, you are treacherous. And if you ask legitimate questions about the establishment, then you're downright seditious. So, and this has been accompanied by the unfortunate killing of journalists who had the conviction of courage to be able to really voice some of the deepest and innermost concerns of this country. So in many, many more ways than one, 2019 is going to be an inflection point in the trajectory of this country. And 2019 is actually going to decide whether we continue down the path that we forged for ourselves all the way back in 1950, or the fundamental trajectory of this country is going to alter. And we leave it at that. Wish you all the best for your deliberations. Thank you.